The second piece, and this goes into like the expertise and credibility and things like that, is you have to be in there doing it, right? So if you're trying to do thought leadership on sales and you haven't sold a deal in 15 years, you're in trouble.
This is Erin Balsa from House of Bold, and you're listening to the Notorious Thought Leader podcast. More and more B2B marketers are talking about thought leadership. Some companies are even renaming their blog the Thought Leadership blog. But what does it actually mean to be a thought leader? And how are top B2B marketers using thought leadership to generate demand? That's what we're here to find out. My guest today is Chris Walker, who's CEO and founder at Refine Labs. Thanks for being here, Chris.
Erin, excited to be here, and congratulations on your new venture. How awesome.
Thank you. So I wanted to have you on today, Chris, because two reasons. Primarily, A, you're a thought leader in my eyes. I know it can be uncomfortable to hear that. When people say, hey, you're a thought leader, it's like, oh, cringeworthy. But I feel like you are, according to how I personally define thought leadership. And B, at Refine Labs, you've been able to do something that a lot of companies want to do, but they struggle to do, which is to get their employees beating the drum on social about the company's unique POV, because we both know that that really does help with business growth, right? So people want to do it. They can't do it. You've managed to do it. And I'd love to kind of dig into that on today's call.
Awesome. Yeah. To go on driving business impact at this point throughout the year, 29% of our net new revenue comes from people that say they heard about us on LinkedIn. So, upwards of 5 million, I can't do the math in my head, but millions of dollars in revenue that come from LinkedIn, from both myself and other people. So there's a huge value in doing that. I agree with that. When it comes to thought leadership, as you probably interpreted, like I personally don't like being called a thought leader. I really consider myself a business person and an entrepreneur and a marketer and a seller and a product developer. I just consider myself a business person. And the key about thought leadership is that you need to have leading thoughts. And the leading thoughts come from direct customer insights with the appropriate analysis and interpretation qualitatively, and by being in the details so much that you can develop leading thoughts. And so there's many thought leaders that love to write a book and speak at conferences, but never actually do any of the work and never know whether their advice they're giving actually works in practice or not. And so I think about it much more like being a practitioner that shares their learnings and ideas over time. And so over the past 3.5 years, I've created a body of work of my progression and the way that I've been able to evolve and communicate differently and discover new things. And so I would much prefer that people take that approach, because I think it just works better. That I'm going to show you the process of the things that I'm doing and the things that I'm learning. And then by putting it on record, a lot of people get to acknowledge that and benefit from the learnings, but you also get to build a body of work that goes back. And so I can go back and say in 2019, this is what I said. And now we're at 2022. And what do you know? It happened, right? And so you build a body of work that drives further credibility over time as well.
I love that you said that. And that's why I always preface it with it's so cringeworthy, right? Because I think that when people set out to be like, oh, I want to be a thought leader, I agree, it's cringeworthy. It's like the wrong way to go about it. So how do you define thought leadership? I know it's about having leading thoughts, but what other kind of characteristics do you think need to be in place for others to then view you as a thought leader?
To produce information, typically on the internet, for a sustained period of time that communicates a perspective that you have that is unique, that many other people do not have, that resonates with a specific demographic.
That's interesting. So at Refine Labs, do you consider having that unique point of view core to your business model and your growth?
100%. It's been the core driver. Otherwise, you're not a differentiated company. And so it started for us with a point of view. And then as the market has responded to that, and as we've grown, it's become a product strategy. So like the key in this point of view is that it can't just be it can't just be you talking. You actually have to act on it from a business, from customer success and product and how you do marketing and selling. And so there's a lot that goes into it, but the point of view is sort of where it starts. Another thing is the point of view can evolve. And so I like having this over a long period of time, being forced to communicate it in a ongoing way, which challenges you to think about what is actually changing on the ground.
Thinking about a point of view, and yours has been marketing attribution is broken, and you've kind of evolved from there, and you've added on nuances of dark social, etc. So when did you start, formulating that point of view, and how did you start testing it with your customers to make sure it was resonating and it was kind of the right point of view for you to lean into?
Yeah. So to be clear, I've had this point of view in my head since 2017 when I saw it in practice as a demand gen manager. And so I've seen this for a very long time, all the different things that companies overinvest in sales and just in a budget balanced way that looks more like 2008 than it does right now. So overbalance on the budget, that they measure marketing in the incorrect way, that they don't acknowledge these tremendous changes in how buyers are actually buying. So there are all the effects that are points of view come from the market. Like, I didn't just make up that companies were challenged with attribution. I consulted 100 companies and recognized that 99 of them said, we struggle with attribution. We need help. Even some of the biggest companies in the world that people listening to this definitely know. So that's where I got the insight, right? The market communicates to you that we think our attribution strategy isn't working. And then it's my job to figure out, why isn't it working? What are the patterns? What are we going to do instead? And then decide whether that's a service, productize it, just create content around it so people can use it. But the insights are what feed that perspective. And then over time, just the fact that 3.5 years have passed and we've gone through some significant events over the past 3.5 years since I started my business, including the dramatic acceleration of digital execution and dark social from executives, middle-aged to late-age executives that used to, in 2019, do in-person meetings, didn't spend any time on LinkedIn, would never go to a virtual event, didn't spend time in a community like a Slack or a Discord, didn't go to their PE/VC meetups because the PE/VC firms didn't have them all the time. All those things that they didn't do in 2019, they got forced to do in 2020 and 2021. And so all of these people that are the decision makers in B2B processes buy 100% differently than they did just 3 years ago. And companies still sell like they bought even longer than that 3 years ago. And so there's just that's where the perspective comes from, is you challenges from the market, and then how do I interpret that and basically communicate it back to them. The seat that's really interesting that I sit in, that's I think what makes me unique, is that I get more inputs than anyone on the planet. I get more inputs. I talk to hundreds of B2B software companies every single month, executives at their company, the customers that we work with. I'm inside of Salesforce data for more than 100 companies. I work with 100 different talented marketers in a ton of different areas. I get hundreds of comments on my LinkedIn posts. People send me emails. I see the reviews on our podcast. I see all the people that show up to the live events that I do 2 or 3 times a week, and the inputs. I do all of that for the insights.
Right.
And then from there, I'm able to communicate patterns and different things that I see because I've seen 100 companies talk about it. But the individual company thinks that they're doing something wrong, not that it's wrong, because they only have a sample size of 1. So when I can do this pattern matching and pattern recognition, I can communicate things that other people can't put into words.
I love that you said that about pattern matching. So I know David Baker talks a lot about pattern matching, and the more, the bigger your sample size, the more you're able to come up with a unique point of view by doing that work that you're doing day in, day out. So what would you say if somebody was kind of hoping to develop a point of view, develop a strategic narrative so that they're not relying on the old way of marketing, which is writing some crappy blog, you're regurgitating what's already out there, you don't add anything new or unique, or gating crappy ebooks and you don't actually care if they're good, all you care about is getting somebody to fill out that form. So, besides having as many kind of conversations and listening in as many places as possible, what else would you advise, not just a founder, but like a marketer? So somebody that's working for you but they don't get to work for you. Someone that's working for a CEO that might not be where you are today. What would you advise them to do to kind of help their CEO or their leaders along, because I think a lot of marketers, they do want to create this good content and they just don't get any help from above. They're kind of stuck creating this generic vanilla crap that nobody wants to read. So is there anything that you would advise them to do?
Yeah, a couple things. So the first thing is to you mentioned CEO a couple times. I just want to sort of like dial in here. Like, it's the person who has the most relevance and credibility with your buyers. So if you're selling into the VP of customer success, it's probably your chief customer officer that should take this role because of the credibility and experience and things like that.
Pause you one thing. When you say take this role, are you talking about kind of the architect, or are you talking about the subject matter expert role?
Subject matter expert, evangelism, things like that.
Okay.
If that person does happen to be your CEO and they're not super pumped to do it without you telling them to, then go find somewhere else to work. It's just like Erin and I talked about this before we got on the show. Like, you can either make a career decision that you're going to work with people that don't get it. When you do, which isn't, I've been through it before. It's entirely frustrating. It slowed down my career. It minimized my potential. I wasn't able to innovate. It's not good. And so do you have the strength and confidence to say, maybe this isn't the place for me? And then when you go and look for a new role, check it on the way in, right? Or look at what they're already doing so that you know that they're already bought in. So then you can go into a machine that's built for you. So I'll go a little bit deeper into what people could do, but I just want to drop those nuggets. I think one of the big things that's been able to drive me throughout this is listening to the haters. And so like the haters fuel all the objections. The people that don't agree with me fuel all the objections. Then all I have to do is figure out how am I going to logically communicate this to these people? Because if I can communicate it to them, it's going to address it for everybody else. And so it creates all these different insights that poke holes in what I'm saying right now, which allow me to form and iterate to make it so that it's bulletproof and airtight. The second piece, and this goes into like the expertise and credibility and things like that, is you have to be in there doing it, right? So if you're trying to do thought leadership on sales and you haven't sold a deal in 15 years, you're in trouble. So actually getting back in there and doing it, and I think a lot of people, once they hit a certain stage in their career, they're like, oh, somebody else can do that or things like that. Like, it's the most important thing for executives to do is to stay in the details and stay relevant. When I move out of the details, I can feel it. And then it makes it less, I'm less confident in the strategies that I build and where I'm directing the organization because I don't have the actual insights myself. And so there's this huge element of doing, which allows you to show and tell what you do, as opposed to just going up onto a whiteboard. Oh, I'm back on this whiteboard. What are the three things our buyers care about? Let's pick out three stereotypical pain points that we have on our cut sheet. Okay. They need to reduce costs. They need to be more efficient, and then put together your thought leadership strategy with no insights.
That's a good point.
You got to do it. You got to do it in order to actually come up with the breakthroughs.
Hell yeah. I totally agree. So for me, I totally agree too that if you don't get what you're looking for, bounce. Like, there's no need to stay at a company that's not challenging you or giving you what you need to be successful. For me, I've worked at a lot of companies that did not challenge me, and it was boring as hell because I'd get there and they'd be like, after 2 months, you're like the best employee we've ever had. I'm like, that's not good, because I'm a hard worker, but I should not be the best employee you've ever had. I need to keep it moving until I find the right environment. So as a writer, when I started out as a writer, I'd get these like shitty ass assignments and it would be like, hey, can you write top 10 listicle? And I'm like, okay, like, who can I interview? No. Like, there's no one to interview. You should just, do your research. And that's what a lot of writers are dealing with. And I eventually lucked out and I started working with companies that have actual really brilliant points of view on the market, and they're category creators and they have something unique to say, and they enable their writers to have access to their subject matter experts. And like you said, if you're selling, a customer success software, you need to give your marketers, not just your writers, your whole marketing team, you need to give them access to your subject matter experts. Otherwise, they're going to be creating crap that does not resonate, right? So
copy and paste from a Google blog and change some words. That's what people do.
It's disgusting and I hate it. Everyone knows that, but I think that's a really important key point. If you're subject matter expert, founder, listening to this, you have to make yourself available. If not you, it has to be somebody very similar to your target buyer and at the same level. Another problem I see a lot in B2B marketing, tell me if you see this too with some of the companies you work with. They are selling, an enterprise solution, and they're talking about these really kind of complex topics, and they're outsourcing to some writer who doesn't have any business experience. They've never walked a day in the shoes of a business leader. They're going to have a hard time creating content that's actually going to resonate with that leader. So one of the workarounds is to make sure that person has the ability to ask good questions and work and collaborate, so that if they don't have the subject matter expert in the business acumen themselves, at least the subject matter expert can, and they can kind of be the mouthpiece for that person. Is that something similar to what you'd recommend?
So as business leaders, imagine if you treated your product like you're treating your content, and you go and find some random agency and you say, okay, here's some ideas, here's a brief, now you come up with the product.
Right.
That's exactly what you're doing right now on a content strategy. What do you have? You got 20 engineers, you got a CTO, you got people thinking about this stuff that are experts, that have specific roles. And I just think that companies do not think about this in the right way. Do you want to build another commodity product, or do you want to build something that's unique to you and going to drive significant competitive advantage? I think that the way that executives look at this is incredibly outdated.
Yeah, I see them.
They look at it in the lens of when you should hire a blogging agency in 2014 to stuff keywords and do stuff like that, and they still use the same process today. And the idea is that I want to get to distribution at one point, because you're never going to achieve your thought leadership if you can't distribute. But the distribution medium has changed significantly from emails, white papers, and blogs to social feeds, communities, and other dark social sharing content platforms like podcasts. The mediums have changed. The core change is that it moved from typically intent-based channels, I want to find a blog about this, to non-intent-based channels that I'm going to look through this stuff and browse and look at what I like. And so if you don't create stuff that people like, they're just going to pass by. And then the algorithm's going to deprioritize it, and your content's not going to get shown because you already demonstrated that people don't want it. And so in SEO, you can create cookie cutter shit because people are searching for that exact cookie cutter shit. It doesn't work like that in dark social, where people get most of the information today.
And is that why you've chosen intentionally not to focus on SEO at all, to optimize your content creation and distribution for dark social?
I just think there's a level of prioritization and focus that I take as a marketer and a business leader that most other people don't. They want to go and spaghetti on the wall, 20 different things. And what I want one or two things that drive massive results. So I'm going to pick what are the best opportunities for me today. Like in 2019, when I started my company, I was like, okay, the potential opportunities here are LinkedIn and Instagram. It was LinkedIn and Instagram. And then I went on a path from April of 2019 to August of 2019, and I created content for both of them as much as I could, almost every day, sharing my perspective. And on August 9th, 2019, I was like, okay, experiment's over. LinkedIn's the place. Forget Instagram. And then I didn't do anything but LinkedIn for the next 365 days. And I'm just posting on LinkedIn every day, and then driving a lot of revenue, helping us attract talent, building just our overall reputation. I had probably 25 or 30,000 followers at that point. And then we go to the live event, and then we add the podcast, and then we live event and podcast for the next almost 2 years with no additional things. And then once the live event and the podcast have come to maturity, there's a new opportunity presenting itself with TikTok, B2B. It used to be 12-year-old girls. Now it's everyone. Now it looks like a good opportunity to go and do that, knowing that it's going to take 3 or 6 months to understand whether these experiments are going to work. And if they work, which I'm feeling very much so as I've executed that they're going to work, that I'm going to have 25,000 followers when people actually start paying attention there, and I'm going to go off and away. And then I have a massive stack: LinkedIn, podcasts, live events, TikTok, YouTube, all channels that are proven to work, that have been methodically developed, have operations and people and team and technology to execute consistently on an ongoing basis. That was my 3-year marketing plan. And what does everyone else do? Okay, we need some emails, we need some SEO. Let's gate that white paper. That conference is happening. We got to go to that. We've been doing that for the past 4 years. And you just do a bunch of, you do a ton of stuff mediocre and nothing well.
And from the perspective of a marketer, that really sucks because you feel like you're running on a hamster wheel. You're prevented from making a real impact because, if you had the time to really go deep on one channel, but you don't because you're being pulled in a million directions. It's like, can you write this email nurture? Can you help us with this, landing page that has nothing to do with marketing? You're just constantly running in a million directions.
I've been there before.
Yeah, so we've both been there before, and we know that this is not the way. We've seen it. We felt the stress of not being able to make an impact because we don't have the ability to be able to go heads down and focus. And I know that. So
there's a level of, I'm sorry to interject here, but I think there's a level of accountability that the people listening to this show and marketers broadly need to take. The reason that you're being reactive and people are telling you what to do is because you're not driving a strategy that drives results. Otherwise, they would get out of your way. And so in 2017, I was the person that was like, hey, can you make that webinar? Can you update this brochure? Can you go to that sales meeting in Oklahoma and go and help the salesperson try and sell because they just started and they don't know what they're talking about? And I would just do whatever they asked me to do. And at one point, and then after doing that it was probably somewhere between 90 and 180 days, I was like, this isn't working and this isn't driving results and it's a waste of time. What are we going to do? And then I think, what would I do if I was the CEO of this company where I have marketers that aren't actually creating demand? I have salespeople that are trying to capture demand that hasn't been created. So we're just fucking spinning our wheels, going to meetings that we never win. What are we going to do to change this? If we were that, okay, how to buy, let's go understand our customers. Let's go understand how they want to buy. Let's see how misaligned that is with our go-to-market strategy. Let's back up and say, how are we going to do this differently? And then that was how my career changed. And then I started to create a video podcast in 2017. I had never run a B2B Facebook ad in 2017. And I had a ABM strategy to our top 500 different children's hospitals and ERs in the US. We were experimenting with Twitter. We did all the same stuff that companies say, like run the ebook, email nurture them. Didn't see any results with that. And it's crazy when you're in a meritocracy, when the CEO only cares how much revenue gets created from your website. Then if shit doesn't work, you shut it off and you stop spending money and effort there. It's not complicated. But because marketers there's a level of accountability in your career that you need to say, am I in a place where I can be successful? If not, you got to go on a different path. But if you are, and I think a lot of people think that they might not be when they are, if you are, then what do I need to change and how do I take accountability to get this stuff moving in the right direction? Because if I'm able to, it will fundamentally change my career. And the reason that I think I'm able to communicate the effectiveness and the importance of marketing, I'm on the borderline of not even calling it marketing anymore. But being able to communicate the effectiveness is because I spent 2 years communicating to an executive team that didn't get it on why they should. And so you have to try a lot of different angles. You have to present different, like, is it marketing CAC the right way to present this? Is total pipeline, is win rate, is sales velocity? Like, what's going to make this resonate with people? And so there's a lot of learnings that could be taken from that experience. I think it's easy as a marketer to say, I'm not in the right place. People are telling me what to do, blah, blah, blah. And I've been there as well. So I'm not throwing any shade, but I do think there's an element of being able to sort of get in the driver's seat of your career and make stuff happen.
And as much as we talk about marketing attribution being broken, which it is because there's so many conversations happening, I mean, I'd say about 2/3 of my inbound opportunities, people that want to work together, come from LinkedIn. The other third is either referrals or random communities that I'm not even in. People mention my name and I end up getting work out of it. So I'm totally on board with you about marketing attribution being broken because it doesn't capture all these conversations that lead to wins. However, I have learned when I was an in-house marketer that marketing attribution can actually help you show that your marketing is broken. For example, let's say you're at a new company and you're gating all of these ebooks, and then 5 minutes later you're calling people that fill out the form, because I've been there and I was like, that's not the right thing to do, but how could I show it? We had to wait a while so that we had enough historical data and attribution to show that even though content was our number one lead type, it had the lowest close rate, right? So it's not successful and we're getting a shit ton of these high volume leads. We're wasting so much time. We're spinning our wheels. We would be more we'd have a better time if we had a unique point of view and we were enabling our sales reps to just start talking about these things and having these conversations in the right places. So actually, marketing attribution software can actually help you to teach and encourage others to start thinking about things differently, in my experience.
It's so funny. I sit in, I over the past 2 or 3 years, I've sat in probably 300 meetings where executives say, we're 100% data driven. We rely 100% on what we get in attribution software. And then you go to them, and for a subset of them, I'm like, okay, why don't we take a look at it? Why don't we take a look at how data driven you are? When you go and you run an analysis, it's like, okay, you spent $4.2 million on Google last year and drove $600,000 of attributable revenue. You're not data driven. You're not even looking at the data. And so these are like, it's the hypocrisy. I don't know what else to call it. The hypocrisy between where we only trust attribution software, and then having the insights of the shit that everything that you're doing is not working, sitting right in front of you and never even looking at them. It just frustrates me. It's like, what are we doing? So you're over here saying that a podcast isn't going to work because you can't measure it, but look at these 7 things that you can measure and they're not working. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah, that topic gets me pretty fired up because anyone could do that analysis. And I've done that analysis many a times. And they're like, content download lead source, 18,000 MQLs, 3 closed won deals for 600K ARR, or like 320K ARR. You get 1 big enterprise deal. And so you think that you can justify that one-off deal that happened to have attribution on it.
I'm curious if you believe there's ever a time when it's acceptable to gate content.
If you're selling it. If you're selling IP or information or processes, that seems like a fine way to gate it. But if you're not, then if the goal of content is to use it to get someone interested in, feeling good about you, otherwise recommending you or buying your product, then why would you want to restrict them from seeing it?
Do you feel like there's any acceptable methods that could be considered like a strategic way of, getting people into your email database ecosystem so that you can nurture them without coming across as a taker and you're not freely giving information away?
I'll answer that question with everything except you're not in it to nurture them. Okay. But if you want, I guess the root of it is why do you want to build your email list? Is this a lead list that you eventually want to capitalize on or whatever reason? I think that what we've been doing is we've been hosting invite only events that you only get access to if you're on this list. And we send out the invite to a subset, not even the whole list, a subset of the list every time, 24 hours in advance, and then you can attend that event. And that's been a way that we've been sort of piloting this. And the stuff that we present in those events is way different than our free content. Includes IP that we either package and sell or use on customers and they pay a lot of money for. And we don't publish them publicly for free. And so I think there are creative ways, but you only get into that position when you create something. Like last time we sent out the invite, 3 hours in advance, invite only, and we had 280 people show up.
Sick.
Can you get to that level? If not, then there's no sense in gating. Gating, I don't even consider that gating, but it's more of signing up for a wait list or registering for an event.
Yeah.
So, and there are obviously nuances. Some people have success with an email newsletter. I think those are, I think you got to be real good to win there. And I think that if prioritized email list over social, I think you're making a mistake. But people do win there, but it's typically rewritten or copied from somewhere else that they were already writing, like a book or something else, so that they can keep up with it. Because writing a long email on a consistent basis is tough. And you can only send email most email newsletters I get that I read, which is one. I get it once a week. You can't send an email newsletter every day.
No.
I can post on LinkedIn 3 times a day if I want.
Because it's intrusive, right? I know I subscribe to one newsletter that is a daily newsletter, but it's like a blurb. It's like a couple sentences, so it doesn't bother me, and I like the person a lot. But for the most part, I like a weekly or a monthly even, because my email is just so saturated. So I hear you on that one. So you said something interesting. You said, I'm thinking about not calling marketing, and I'd love to know where your head's at there.
I think that the way that companies look at sales and marketing, and I'm brainstorming here because I'm actually not fully aligned in this position, just a hedge. But I think the companies that look at sales and marketing, the way that they look at it, like they have since the 90s, is just not helping businesses anymore. And it creates like unnecessary silos and responsibilities towards certain things. And because of the mindset of companies, if you look at how both the marketing and the sales team, what they do, how the budget and effort gets focused, it's all about capturing demand. If you think about the things where companies spend a majority of their budget, sales team, SDR team, intent data, SEO and SEM, paid search, content syndication, paid social lead gen, webinars to get leads, trade shows, the entire marketing expense, 95% or more, not marketing, the entire revenue team expense, sales and marketing combined, is 95% or more spent on capturing demand. And they do nothing and they have no focus on creating demand. Or if they do, they put it under a brand team that makes the website and makes decks and perhaps produces a podcast once a month that nobody listens to, right? And so we need to, like, I'm suggesting that companies stop with sales and marketing and start looking at it as capturing demand and creating demand. And when you look at it that way, you actually have sellers and marketers on both teams. You got sales, you got closers, you got SDRs that are focused on capturing demand with intent data. You got performance marketers that are running Google search and stuff for that, only for high intent buyers. You're focusing on things that are driving buyers that actually want to buy, not just leads. And then you create all the space for evangelists, subject matter experts, dark social people, a podcast producer, video editors for social, people that can run live events, like PR or people to get your CEO on podcasts. And you actually look at them as two separate teams. And those teams then have the appropriate goals and measures. The demand creation team is, their goal is to drive demand. You can figure out multiple ways of customer research combined with self-reported attribution to measure that effectively and quantify those results and understand where to invest. And you got the whole other side that's focused on how are we going to capture demand that's already been created and create and drive revenue. And when you create that distinction, like there are some of the best salespeople that would be on the demand creation team, and they would create they would create a more tangible business impact by being on that team. But because and there are marketers that probably would be great at capturing demand, not necessarily selling, but capturing demand in some part of that process, and they don't get the opportunity to really explore that either. And so I think there's just so many reasons why to think about this, and it matches. Instead of you talking about what activity are we doing, you think about what are we doing for the customer.
I love that. I know a company that recently devolved their marketing team, and they didn't do quite that, but they put half the marketing team with sales. So they were one small team and the other half went with the product team. So they're really thinking about the end-to-end product experience, right from, the website right into the product. So I know this is happening. I think you got your finger on the pulse of what's to come, and there's going to be different ways this is going to shake out. But I think that there is going to be a shift, because even in like my world, my last job, I was a marketing director over content, but that was really more than just editorial. A lot of people think content is writing. It's obviously not. I had, graphic design and digital learning and all video and things like that. And it's difficult because a lot of times, even with a team like that, you are split between the people who are collaborating with demand gen, placing the paid ads, and the copywriter has to go over there. Whereas the content writer who's writing the ebooks has to go over with these people. And you're all on this team and you're kind of like still siloed in a sense. And it just doesn't make much sense the way the modern marketing team is. So I'm curious to see how it's going to shake out.
Yeah, I can see it happening. Just on the record, like tucking marketing into the sales team and the product team is not what I'm suggesting. And I hate that.
No, but things are happening. Things are getting interesting.
Yeah, it's like it's worthwhile to think about what the shakeup would be. And maybe that's something that we'll pilot here at Refine Labs. Actually, we're sort of like, it feels like we're subconsciously sort of doing that anyway. I'll think more about it.
Yeah. So I'm bullish personally on pairing marketers with internal subject matter experts to create content, because I'm not sure if you're familiar with Ashley Foss. She's a friend of mine. She works at Atlassian. And I talked to her on the last recording of this podcast because she has an interesting model for thought leadership. And there's 4 pillars in her model. And one of them is being prolific. So as she defines thought leadership to be a thought leader, requires you to have multiple forms of short and long-term content on multiple channels. So if you're only on one channel under her model, it's not true thought leadership because prolific matters. And with the kind of subject matter experts that are leading companies, they just don't have the time to be prolific, right? So these are the people that have the brains and the stuff in their brains that you want, but they don't have the time to actually be out there all the time. So the solution for me is to pair them with their own marketers so that those people have a really tight relationship. What do you feel about that?
I'm just as, if not way more busy than most executives that are thinking about doing this. I'm in meetings from like 10 a.m. to 7 or 8 p.m. almost every day. I'm doing a bunch of work. I run a 100-person company. I do a ton of live events and content creation. I'm busy. And I manage to put a LinkedIn post out almost every day, 1 to 2 TikTok posts, create 3 or 4 podcasts a week, publish that stuff, keep it on the right track, host live events because I prioritize it, right? It'd be easy for me to say, and I could have said this at any point, oh, our company's more than 100 people now. I don't have enough time. I got to focus on these other things. Let's delegate this to a marketing manager. They can work with other people. But I know as the leader of this company that it impacts how we attract talent, how we retain people that work here, how we attract customers, how we make sales easier, how we communicate our point of view and how we grow a massive company and how we get insights to continue to develop the product. It's like the strategy. And so like I don't have time. It takes me, I think I allocate somewhere between 8 and 12 hours a week to work on this as the CEO of a rapidly growing 100+ person company. And I'm not planning on slowing it down anytime soon because it's the fuel. Yeah. It's the amplifier, right? So you can not do this and then you can sort of like go like, you'll make progress, right? Just because you don't do this doesn't mean that you're going to fail or something like that. But it's the jet fuel that the CEO can provide. It's also a really weird thing. This will go somewhere, but I've had this idea since 2017. We had a field sales team and they would drive around to accounts and things like that. And I was like, why wouldn't we create a podcast with our customers and experts so that every time our sales team was driving 4 hours between meetings that they could listen to this and become an expert on the most up-to-date recent advice and hear companies that use our product in their territory talking about how they use it and what they like. And like that would work for our team and it would work for our customers. Right. Awesome. And that's basically what I'm doing here. A lot of people listen to our podcast. It creates ongoing training and development and alignment of what we're actually trying to do. And so I think about this both from customers and I guess all 3 stakeholders, customers, employees, shareholders, everyone can benefit from something like this.
I love that. I love that take because you're right. You're not just doing it to get people into the funnel. Every podcast episode educates your employees. All the new people that are joining, all they have to do is listen. They're going to get up to speed way faster than the employees who are working remotely, heads down in their own little silo. They're not going to get it. So I think that right there is a good motivation for anyone who's listening who says they are too busy. I'm too busy to do this. Maybe you're not, because maybe you can replace your long drawn out all company memos and decks. And maybe this can, take up some of that time. Right. So I love that. I think that's important for people to hear. But on the other side, there are people who are still going to say, I'm still too busy. So for those people, how can marketers and employees create great content and share thought leadership and share unique content when their internal subject matter experts are too busy to do any of it themselves?
If your internal subject matter experts are quote unquote too busy, this has happened to me before. We were selling into hospitals, we had PhDs and MDs that were subject matter experts, but they were focused on helping the sales team sell a big deal or work, go into some meetings or being at that trade show. This is 2017. These people are like true experts and they get off by going to a conference and speaking in front of 100 people. But when they would be on a podcast that's going to get listened to by 50,000 people over a period of time, they're like, oh, that's not for me. So they just didn't really get it. And then the excuse becomes, I'm too busy, right? Just, I don't think this is valuable enough for my time in order to do this. And so what I did was, the first thing as a marketer, that I'm a biomedical engineer. I had a pretty good understanding of the clinical data. I talked to a bunch of customers. I actually had a pretty decent sense. So one, go out and learn the shit, right? So like it takes you 6 months to go out and actually, I learned a deep technical subject, and I could speak with a physician about it in an educated way within 6 months. So you can do that for whatever you're selling to. So like you can go and figure it out. But then the next thing is start the podcast by interviewing thought leaders and people in the markets. We would interview people that had done the clinical trials about our product that were outside of our company. They're experts. They might actually be more experts than the people we have in our company, and they're potentially more credible. Talk to our best, interview some of our best customers in person, create video podcasts. Then when you're 9 episodes in, then you insert, hey, we actually want to do a webinar. We want to do a live event. People are loving this stuff. We already got 300 people registered. Dr. blah, blah, blah. Can you, come on and do this hour webinar? We already made the materials. You just need to add your expertise and answer questions. And they come in and they see it and they see, wow, like there was 300 people listening to me speak live. Did you see all those questions? People liked it. And then they want to do it. So you got to get the train moving, because you're not going to get someone excited about it before it started if they're not excited. And then put them in a position that's similar to the position that they like to be in as a thought leader, most likely speaking at conferences or speaking at a dinner or something like that. Put them in a position like that, record it, and let them see what the live event feels like. And then you get all the content on the back end. That's the method that I've used.
I love that. I also think it's important to lead by example. Like if you know and you're bullish on LinkedIn, marketers, I think it's important that you need to be there. You can't just tell people to do something if you're not willing to walk the walk yourself. So something that I did at my last company was I found a lot of success on LinkedIn. It's enjoyable, and I think it's a great way to grow a business. And if you have busy executives and they're busy because they're speaking, but maybe they're not creating content on LinkedIn, what you need to do is train them, make it fun, and show them your success, and then keep beating it once a month. Like, hey, look we've got this many more new customers because of LinkedIn. Imagine how much more we would get if you were on LinkedIn, and keep offering that training. So I found that to be really successful. I know a lot of companies, they want to do it. They just don't know how to get started, and they're nervous, and they think nobody's going to care. But I think it's just a matter of consistent pushing and showing and leading by example. And I just wanted to add that onto what you said, just to kind of flesh that out. And I know we're running up on time, Chris, so I just want to ask one more thing. Like I said at the start, I think that, Refine Labs has done an epic job of using you as a subject matter expert, but then also growing this awesome team of employees who are very active on social, super smart, sharing really, interesting insights of their own. They're not just saying, according to Chris Walker, they're actually creating content that's really in alignment with your point of view and all the things that you say. And companies aspire to do this, but then they end up having a marketing team that doesn't do this. What advice would you give them if they want to kind of follow in your footsteps?
So first thing, the people that are posting content are marketers, but in a traditional org, they would fall into our customer success department. So that's a really interesting nuance for people. The people that are creating the content and publishing it on LinkedIn spend time and are experts in our customers' world every day. So that's a nugget here. Like, just it overlaps because our customers are marketers and our employees are many marketers. So it looks that way. But like when we were selling into hospitals, the best people to create content for LinkedIn were our respiratory therapists. They were our CSMs. We hired them out of hospitals and they trained our customers on how to use the product effectively. And those were the people that were best at creating the content. So there's an overlap where marketers could do it, but it's really a marketer's job to put the people that are the best at it in a position to succeed in a place where they want to do it. And so when we think about, like, that's one nuance, but when we think about how we get to this point, it's not just like, okay, we got our enterprise company, right? Your SAP. Oh, we want to get our people to post on LinkedIn. Let's buy a tool, hire some firm to do a couple of trainings, and then hope that they do it, or, create a measurement of how many posts we make on LinkedIn and people will just sort of mail it in. This is something that you need to bring people in this way, not just change the people that you have. And so we've been doing this since we were one person that worked at the company, me. And this has been the main mechanism that we use to attract and inspire prospective talent. And so when people come in, they've listened to our podcast, they believe in dark social clearly because they're here. They have consumed content on LinkedIn. They might have already started writing content on LinkedIn, or maybe they didn't because most companies don't make people feel comfortable to do it. And then when they join here, they're like, hell yeah, I can't wait to get here and do the same things that the people that work at LinkedIn, Refine Labs do. And so there's a huge element of how you attract talent drives who you actually hire. So we because of how we attract talent, we get people that are aligned with what we do. The second piece is that once people are in here, you actually have to deliver from a cultural perspective, which means make people feel safe. People that don't post about marketing, or actually some people post things that are in direct opposition of what I say. I don't care. Right. Like, but we're not over there reprimanding. You don't get a slap on the wrist for communicating your perspective. It comes with the territory of allowing people to be creative and share their own perspectives. And so that's just something culturally that I've never felt, except for the company that I've built. When I worked at other companies, you post on LinkedIn and the director of sales is coming over to you like, hey man, you looking for another job?
Right. Yeah, that happens so much. It's bullshit.
So you posted on LinkedIn the last 2 days. That usually means people are looking for a job. You looking for a job? I got to tell Joe about this. And like, that's no wonder people don't post on LinkedIn in your company when stuff like that happens. And whether someone asks you directly or whether you talk about it in the shadows, it all matters. And so none of that stuff happens here, which empowers people to continue to do it. And I could say that we do a bunch of training, but we don't. Like, we spend 1 hour during someone's onboarding to like show them the core principles of what we do on LinkedIn. And then people can figure it out because they're in a space where they feel safe and empowered to do it. And so I think this is truly more, how do you attract talent? Who are you attracting and hiring? And then how do you create a culture where people feel safe to do it? And the most important thing is, do the executives at your company do it? 80% of our C-level executives post on LinkedIn multiple times a week. So no wonder the people that are VPs and directors and managers want to do it too. So there's like, if you're a business and you're like, we want to get this off the ground, and your CEO or your CFO or your CMO, your executives aren't demonstrating that this is actually a valuable behavior that they believe in enough that they're going to learn how to do it, then you can't expect your organization to. And so there's like, I made a whole keynote on this. I forget what number it was, but it was published in April. It's like, we're at a point now where if leaders want people to be inspired and do stuff, the leaders need to start doing the stuff themselves, especially when it comes to like marketing and dark social. But I think across the board, there just needs to be a lot, because things are changing so fast that if you're an executive and you haven't been in the details, if you're a CMO and you haven't been in the details since you've been a CMO since 2007, right? So like, you probably don't know how to build a Salesforce report on your own. You probably have never, posted content on social. Like, you don't know how marketing automation works because you were a CMO before that. So you outsource that to everyone. So anything that's happening in marketing besides events and sales enablement, like, you're not into the details enough to know how to execute them, which makes you incredibly vulnerable. And so like, the only way that I continue to innovate and push our organization forward is because I'm in there doing it. So I see the details and the signals. If you're an executive and you're relying on other people to get the insights that help you make decisions, again, that's a tough position to be in. I want to get those insights myself from customers.
Totally agree. This has been awesome. Thank you, Chris. I think there's been a lot of really useful information for the listeners. So Chris, if people want to follow you, if they don't already know you, where's the best way for them to follow you?
I'll drop, you can obviously follow me on LinkedIn, Chris Walker, but TikTok, the stuff's going off. I'm doing I do live sessions every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. So TikTok live is a new thing and actually been going quite well. And for people that are like, oh, like, TikTok's for 12-year-olds, or I'm not on there, or that's lame, or my audience is on there, or it's not going to work for B2B marketing, or I'm scared, or I'll just stay where I'm at. Like, there's something happening here. It's not going to like make a difference in your business tomorrow, but the learnings that you get from it are going to be huge, because all social networks will converge onto the user experience of TikTok. It's simply a superior user experience and a superior algorithm. And so if you want to miss out on those learnings, again, like if you don't go on the treadmill and go for a jog, you're going to really suck when you try and run the marathon. And so like these are things that you can come in, you can see why is Chris Walker doing a TikTok live and there's 13 people there? Because I know that it's there. And when I did my first LinkedIn lives and when I started posting my first LinkedIn post, I got 7 likes. I got 12 likes. 7 people showed up live. I still have lives where less than 10 people show up. And I actually think some of those are the best because I'm not there for the attendance. I'm there to create the content and I'm there to learn and explore. And so on TikTok, like all the signs that I got from LinkedIn in 2019, the exact same signs are happening on TikTok. They're the same ones I got on Instagram in 2016 and Facebook in 2012. So there's a pattern matching, a pattern recognition of what's happening. It's definitely happening in TikTok. And I'm going to be there and present and have, 500 videos posted before you even log in or create an account. And I'm going to have 25,000 followers. I'm going to understand the platform. It's the exact same thing that happened on LinkedIn. You were also late on LinkedIn and you got there and you're like, wow, this Chris Walker guy has a lot of followers. It's because I just recognized the opportunity. And when I recognize it, I actually act on it. I actually create priorities. So this is a call for people. Maybe you don't want to go on TikTok. Maybe you want to be more conservative and more present day on something like LinkedIn or a podcast. But if you're not executing on one of those 3 things right now, then you're in real trouble.
Hallelujah, Chris. Thank you so much. You're awesome. I'm going to drop your links in the show notes and I will talk to you later. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Erin. This was fun.
The Notorious Thought Leader is brought to you by Haus, a content strategy and messaging studio for B2B SaaS companies who need bold content that makes them buckle up, pay attention, and take action. To find out more about Haus of Bold, head to hausofbold.com. That's HAUS. And then make sure to subscribe to the Notorious Thought Leader in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, so you never miss an episode. Thanks for joining me. See you next time.